And we're back. Welcome to the Two Joes podcast. It's a chilly Sunday evening here in October.
Halloween fast approaching.
It is, yeah, less than a week away now.
Yep.
And we've been chatting with the editorial cartoonist for the Salt Lake Tribune, Mr. Pat Bagley, and we've sure enjoyed the first two sessions and looking forward to this wrap up very much.
Totally.
So during the chill right there, you approached a great question about.
Well, earlier we were talking, and Pat mentioned a cartoonist that he saw. I think it was Bloom County, and how he knew that he had something, and he knew he was going to be good. I was wondering if there was anybody that you've kind of mentored or sponsored. You've seen some talent. You've encouraged them along the way.
So a couple of years ago, I was invited by the Korean Cartoonist Association to come out to South Korea.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was an amazing visit, an amazing trip. But they worked me hard. You know, I went around and I did a lot of speaking and meeting people. And one of the places they took me to was the Animation High School.
Interesting.
Where's that?
It's in Seoul.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
But there's a high school where the kids have to test into it. They've got to show an aptitude towards art, and especially
Makes sense.
graphic art, and they're big into video games. I mean, huge into video games. There are people who do video games professionally in South Korea, and they're rock stars, right? And so they're cultivating these young people to do, the storylines, the art, and this is the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
I remember going to the high school and talking to them and showing them my stuff. And then I taught a class, and there were 30 or 40 kids. And so I gave them challenges, draw something with this in it. Or, starting with this shape, then see where it goes. And then I'd go around the class and look at them. And this one girl, her stuff just stood out. I mean, it was great. It was, I've been doing this for 40 years, and her stuff was better than mine in some ways.
Was she drawing current contemporary characters or her own creations?
Kind of her own creations. And one of the girls said, look at her, have her show you her sketchbook. And so I looked at the sketchbook, and it just blew me away. And so I thought, she's wonderful. What can I possibly do? And before I left South Korea, somebody contacted me and said, the mother wants to talk to you. And so we got together with the mother, the girl, and a translator. And I found out through the translator that the mother was afraid that if she stayed in South Korea,
She'd starve.
She would.
Being an artist.
Being a mother, yeah, she would say that, right? But she's afraid that her creativity would be crushed out of her.
Even in South Korea?
Interesting.
Even in South Korea.
Democratic,
Well, they've got that strong culture there, and maybe they don't.
Her stuff was so unique, right, that it wasn't really appreciated. And I remember showing her stuff to some of the cartoonist friends in South Korea, and they go, oh, yeah, and they kind of dismissed it. And I thought that was kind of curious, right? So I said, well, I'll go back to the U.S. and I'll see if I can, what I can find. And I spent 6 or 7 months, talking to people, and they gave me suggestions, and it was always kind of a dead end. And then I ran into Steve Urquhart. He was a former senator up at the legislature. Interesting character. Interesting character. And so I was talking about this girl, and he goes, well, I do that for the University of Utah. Is I handle the foreign campuses, and there happens to be one in Seoul, South Korea, for the University of Utah. And so I hooked her up with that, and I haven't heard anything recently, but she's got this outlet now.
Wonderful.
So she's
wonderful.
Taking classes at this outlet, or how is this helping her?
Well, she's got a connection to an American university, not a South Korean university.
Right. Okay.
But a place where she can start there, and maybe, she'll be appreciated, and maybe someday come here.
Yeah.
She hasn't traveled here yet then?
No.
Okay.
She was 13, 14 years old when I first saw her stuff.
Oh, wow.
So she's 16 now.
I was thinking 18, 19.
No, I mean, her stuff was remarkable. It was amazing.
That's great.
So that leads me into kind of another question that I just came to me. So I'm not to age anybody here, but you are approaching retirement age. Do you see this art form dying? Do you see some up-and-comers that are going to carry this on, carry the torch, kind of, so to speak? Some younger editorial cartoonists that you can point us toward to check out?
So sure. I mentioned that the people who have my kind of job were kind
few
of
and far
dinosaurs.
between.
Yeah.
But the internet has given the opportunity for people to publish their own stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of it, and that's why I'm so pro net neutrality. Because you got to keep that door open for these people.
And there's this one publication called The Nib, and it's put out by Matt Bors, who's a cartoonist. But it's become this place where a lot of millennials go to showcase their stuff. And where I do a lot of the single panel cartoons, with things symbolize certain things. The next generation is doing a lot of cartoons where it's kind of like reporting. It's long form. They tell a story.
Interesting.
We'll take 3 or 4 pages to go through, and they'll talk about healthcare. They'll talk about poverty. They'll talk about mental illness. But it's not that single panel cartoon. It's more of a story. And these people are definitely political cartoonists. Some don't even realize it yet, but they're making these commentaries. And, again, the place is called The Nib. Just go to The Nib and see what's going on there.
Interesting.
My favorite licorice, too.
Almost like a...
Easy to remember.
It sounds like a new art form or a new...
Well, it kind of started with those graphic novels. People grew up on that stuff and telling stories with pictures. And there you go.
Okay, interesting. I'll have to check that out for sure.
A question popped in my head, not related, but I'm wondering about your equipment, your artistic equipment, and not only what it is today, but how has that evolved over the years? I assume it was just a box of pencils and some paper, and things have changed dramatically.
Yeah, so early on it was paper, and I tried to draw with a brush, so a brush and ink. And then I moved from that to pen and ink.
Okay.
And then I moved from that to I got this kind of Sharpie kind of pen. It was a felt tip pen that I loved. I loved the line that it made, and it suited my style. So I started doing that. And after going through all these expensive pens and expensive papers, and I ended up doing it on typewriting paper with this 99-cent pen, which worked. And so I was doing that until about 7, 8, 9 years ago, and they stopped making the pen.
I hate it when that happens.
I know. So, yeah. So I have to kind of go back, and what do I do? And so I start to draw things in pencil. And then I go, I should have been doing this all along.
Oh.
Because I like the line, and, it gives some expression to what I want to do, and it's worked out really well. But I've transitioned from the actual pencil to using it on an iPad. So
that was where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a stylus, and the feel and the look is exactly like a pencil.
Really? And this is straight up Apple Pen, Apple iPad.
Yeah.
And it's probably the bigger than the original iPad. It's like a Pro, a little bit larger.
Yeah, it's a little bit larger.
Okay, yeah. My daughter wants that so bad.
Okay. And the app that I use is called Procreate.
Okay.
And
interesting.
It's like $10. And
our legislature wouldn't like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a great art app, and it does everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so your daily deadline is like 4:30 p.m. every day, 5 p.m.?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to wake up tomorrow with an idea and get it submitted.
Or not.
No. I'm almost, here's my theory. Some of his cartoons are so of the day. I'm thinking they slip him some of these articles that they're currently working on. So he actually takes those and then writes the cartoon. So when the article comes out, the cartoon's right there. Is that true or no?
That's by accident if that happens.
Wow.
But
sometimes, man, it's like he's bam. He's got like ESP.
I'll see
or
something on CNN at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll see
Yeah.
a Bagley Bagley or Bagley? Forgive
Bagley.
Me. Bagley.
Bagley.
Forgive me. Yeah. Yeah, I'll see a Bagley cartoon at 4:30 p.m. on the same thing.
So
you know,
that's
the
just
same
pure
subject, so.
coincidence and accident when that happens.
Pretty much, or who knows? You know, I'll hear stuff in the newsroom, and who knows how much that goes into the cartoon.
That's why he likes going in every day.
Yeah.
That was my theory anyway.
So and they're smart people, and they're doing interesting
Got
things.
their pulse on what's going on.
Mm-hmm. But getting back to how he did the cartoons, there used to be a physical artifact, for a cartoon, and now it's all just
Digital.
in the ether. It's all digital,
Yeah.
so it doesn't really exist. People want an original, and it's just not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as you do one on the iPad, do you immediately make a hard copy for archive purposes, for historical purposes?
So I send it to Kaggle.com, and they archive it. The Trib archives it, and then I don't actually make a physical copy. So I'm just assuming that it's still going to be there if I need it.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to talk about certain huge events that have happened in Utah over the decades, and kind of pepper you a little bit on whether you cartoon them. Or is that a correct word?
Sure.
Cartooned? Yeah. The first one that just popped in my head was I believe the Mark Hoffman bombings back in.
Oh, yeah.
When was that? Yeah. Was that during your stint?
We came up on the anniversary of that, so that was maybe probably 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was in the 70s, I believe.
80s.
80s? It might have been the 80s. Yes, I think it was. Early 80s. Yeah. No, it was... Well, that begs a bigger question. Was that too sensitive a thing to cartoon?
Oh, no. But what I recall from that whole episode was that I got it wrong. There were lots of rumors going on at the time, and who was the killer and why were they doing this, and I knew people who worked in the library system, and they were kind of plugged into this whole thing because it had to do with books, and they knew some of the people involved, but nobody thought it was Mark
Hoffman.
Mm-hmm. Nobody picked him.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of cartoons, and I was barking up the wrong tree.
Wow.
Wow.
I thought this is it. I thought the documents were real. These documents that were coming out, and they were really, really good. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was master. He was an expert.
And then I would hear things like, well, it's kind of weird because people would say, gee, Mark, wouldn't it be great if we could find this document? And then all of a sudden it would turn up.
Yes.
So
like 2 weeks later. Yeah.
People started putting two and two together, and it led to Mark Hoffman. And he was a stone cold killer. He was bad news.
Yeah. Barbara Sheets, I believe, was one of his victims.
That's
if I
right.
remember. Yeah. What's another big one? President Clinton designating the Grand Staircase Escalante Monument, and then I believe it was it George Bush or Trump that greatly reduced it.
It was Trump, and he did that just this last year.
Yeah, it was recent. That's right. Yeah.
But that had been a monument since 2000.
Well, it was before that. Bill Clinton, I remember, was the one who made it a monument, a national monument.
Yeah, and I since I was doing this book and I was going through these old cartoons, I actually found the cartoon from that time. Mm-hmm. And he's got all of the Utah politicians yelling at him. And he's just going, yada, yada, yada. not listening to them.
Yeah, I was really hoping Utah could put the kibosh on him. But, there's a contingent of Utah politicians that seem not as concerned about our natural resources as I thought they might be. Because, they're Republicans, but they're Utahns, so...
But don't Republicans like to go hiking sometimes?
That's what I thought, especially in Utah. They're Utahns. They love the outdoors, but yet they allow fracking to go on. All this other stuff's going on.
I mean, I think haven't these guys read Dr. Seuss?
Yeah.
Don't they?
Lorax.
Lorax. Don't they understand any of this? And apparently not. Yeah. But the whole purpose of what they want to do is to turn our public lands into, they want to sell it to their donor buddies, is what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. And a few people would make a killing. A few people would make a lot of money. Yeah, but it's lost to the rest of us forever if that happens. Yeah. They don't care. Yeah. Money is the root of all Republicans.
There's a T-shirt right there. Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you look at the makeup of our legislature right now, it used to be educators and physicians, and now it's mostly developers.
And lawyers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Developers and lawyers, or lawyer developers.
Another reason why I need to subscribe to the Tribune, because I don't know enough about what's going on in Utah. You know, I paid too much attention to federal stuff and not enough to Utah stuff.
There's 6 weeks, starts in February when it's a state held hostage. You just wait.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the legislature comes into session end of January.
End of January.
And then 6 weeks of them doing their crazy stuff. And it's they don't even hide it anymore.
No, Trump.
I mean,
you don't have to. Trump does it. I can do it too.
Yeah.
The biggest donor to state legislators is Energy Solutions, which does the radioactive waste stuff in the West Desert.
Been doing it for years.
And they've been doing it for years, but they're the biggest donor. And 2 years ago, they gave them a $17 million a year tax break. Where they
so needed it, right?
You almost might think that Energy Solutions was purchasing their own legislature.
Oh, you'd think? Maybe.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm...
and so Energy Solutions, they donate, a couple $1 million to these guys over the years. And
it's not as much as you think.
No, I mean they're cheap.
I would think
they're
like
cheap.
$500 million.
It seems like they're priced. I've seen the charts and some of these, like you
it's
say
like
before.
$80,000 here and $120,000 here.
Heck of an investment.
Yeah.
But
it's continual. It's a drip. They can count on that.
But their investment in the legislature pays off. Because a couple $1 million and they get $20 million back. And they did that 2 years ago, and then they did it again this last year. And I do these cartoons that explicitly lay out,
clear as day.
Clear as day. They're corrupt, they're rotten, and these guys don't care because that's the way that they do business these days.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just behind the times. Get with it. Get with the program there, Main Joe.
Well, it drives me nuts too is how our legislators, both local and national, they do not write the bills. They simply pass them. They are written by the moneyed interests. They write them.
Oh, yeah.
And they might need to tweak something here or there to get it through committee or through chamber, but they don't write bills anymore. It's like our presidents don't write speeches anymore. They have a team of speechwriters. But President Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address and the Emancipation Proclamation and both of his inaugural addresses.
We need fundamental systemic
change. Yes, indeed.
Well, there's that organization called, I think it's ALEC.
Yes. I forget the acronym, but
Oh, it's the money from the Koch brothers, and they're behind this American Legislative Exchange Council. And so they bring all the legislators around the country together once a year, and they break up into subjects, and they're given the legislation. This is the legislation to hurt unions. This is how you do it. So back in the day, legislators would have to write their legislation, but they go to this ALEC convention, and they go to these breakout sessions, and they said, "This is the legislation. This is how we're going to give rich people more more money from freedom from taxes." And they don't even write the legislation. They just take it and they bring it back.
Yeah. They don't write it.
There was a time in this country where lobbyists had a role to play in our government. They were legit, but it seems like everything is just, let's see if we can take it to the next step. Oh, look at that. We got away with that. Let's see if we can push a little further. Oh, look at that. We got away with that.
Oh, wait, we can make more money if we pay a little money there and talk to them.
Well, not just make more money, but
why don't we just let the lobbyists write the legislation?
That's
Let's try
true,
that.
yeah.
It's crazy how it's just kind of gotten so warped.
Well, the savings and loan scandal is at the early 80s.
Yeah, Charles Keating.
So they had 1,000 prosecutions and convictions.
Wow.
And the Department of Justice hired hundreds of lawyers to handle all this. And then 2008, the financial collapse. Nobody.
Nobody was
held accountable.
One.
Yeah.
One
was one guy.
Jail.
Yeah.
But for a 6-month term.
Yeah. So the thing is, they do get away with it, and they figure,
Yeah.
And now we've got Trump.
Yep.
Well, they look, after they say, okay, that was a shitstorm. Now let's wait about 5-10 years and we'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think I've heard that more than once, where people just forget. They don't. Or like I was talking to one of our friends, and he's a Republican, and he was saying his big thing was Obamacare kind of screwed him. And like it screwed me too. I mean, my situation is worse because of Obamacare. Sure, my back is covered now, but the cost is astronomically more expensive for my health insurance. So he was like, well, I'm Republican because fool me once. Look what the Democrats did with the health care system. Fool me once, fool me once. That's
2 years after Obama left office.
Kept saying, fool me once. Well, what about Republicans fooling me with the war in Iraq? What about them crashing our economy and Obama
fooling me with trickle down?
Yeah, fooling me with trickle down for
over
decades.
And over.
For decades, it's like I don't. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know why I went there, but
well, because this latest Republican tax cut is going to cost us $2.5 trillion.
I think you had 2.3 on your cartoon with Lee pushing that big. I didn't think it was that much. I was like, I think Pat might have this wrong because I thought it was like 1.5.
At first they said 1.5, but then
trillion.
The actual implementation and these guys, being greedy is not enough. They have to get.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm amazed that there's enough middle class in this country to keep this all functioning the way it's functioning. Because, I look at these homes they're building behind my older 78 home. They just built a bunch of brand new ones. And those homes are gorgeous. They're huge 3-car garages. They got RVs in the side of them. These people got money, obviously, or they're accredited to the max.
Well, Utah has the highest rate of bankruptcy in the nation. Because appearances to Utahns is very important,
huge,
right?
huge.
It's huge. And so they will get themselves in situations where they really can't afford it. But I don't know. Faith?
Yeah, I don't know either. Well, you bring up bankruptcies. That's one of my favorite stories to tell is I was cruising along Foothill going to one of our jams. We have a friend that lives up there, and I was asking him, like, look at these mansions. They're just amazing houses. I was like, what are the people that own these houses? What do they do? Yeah. And he's like, oh, that's all bankruptcy, dude.
Yeah.
Well, either bankruptcy or they're plastic surgeons.
It's nuts.
Back to the tax cut scam, the most recent one that Trump passed. I searched today, Pat, and I looked for an Orrin Hatch cartoon of yours where he stood behind the podium saying, oh, you know what, we never would have gotten this done, President Trump, without exquisite leadership from you. Perhaps the best leadership this country's ever seen. Do you remember this fiasco, this ridiculous? Did you do a cartoon on that one? I couldn't find one if you did.
Oh, I've done a lot of Hatch cartoons, and this is about the time that he was named. He got the Medal of Freedom from Trump.
Orrin Hatch did?
That? Yes.
I didn't see that clip then. Jeez.
But it's like, wow. I think, he's going to retire. Good. I don't have to do any more Orrin Hatch.
That's funny.
Well, if you ever want to see Orrin Hatch, just go to the biggest Costco in the world. He's there all the time. I've seen him a bunch.
The one on State Street? Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, the biggest Costco in the world is in Utah?
Salt Lake City at 3rd West.
Right by the hospital. Oh, 3rd West.
3rd West and 21st. Well, it's like between 17th and 21st.
Oh, he's there all the time?
Utahns like their bulk.
That's true. Is he getting free samples and shit?
Oh, yeah. And he also has a couple of security guys with him in their black suits with their white shirts and black ties.
Yeah.
Man.
I guess he's buying stuff for his staff.
He's really tall.
Orrin Hatch is, really?
Yeah.
Usually when people
He's
get that
icky.
old...
He's icky, but he's tall.
Looking, yeah, but when they get that old, they're usually like 4 feet tall. Like Noah, who built the boat, he was only like 4 feet tall. So, what's next on the agenda?
Well, for me, it's green Jello, or maybe Jello in general, because I read something where Pat was influential in getting Jello named Utah's favorite snack officially in the legislature, or something along those lines.
So, Mormons are famous for green Jello and Jello desserts and Jello with carrots and
funeral potatoes.
Funeral potatoes and stuff like that. Yep. And Utah lost its primacy in the Jello category because I think it was Iowa. For a brief time, did more Jello than we did. And
Curse Iowa.
So the Utahns took this as, okay.
A challenge.
And so they stood up.
More Jello.
And so the they got the Jello crown back to Utah, and I did a few cartoons about it. And so the Jello people gave me it was a anniversary pack of champagne Jello. That's what it was called.
Champagne Jello.
I remember that champagne Jello. It was
Yes.
terrible.
Well, but it was signed by their spokesman,
Nice.
Bill
who
Cosby.
was Bill Cosby.
Wow.
So I got this
Ew.
thing. I know,
Ew.
On eBay, it might go for some money. I don't know.
but I'm trying to think of a way to get rid of it that would actually benefit
Yeah.
me too.
Sell it for
or-
charity. Yeah.
Sell it for charity.
Someone with some
Absolutely.
crazy rich guy would buy it, wouldn't
Or
they?
you can buy it, destroy it, burn it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they do that and they
Yeah.
film it, put it on YouTube, go viral.
So I've got to think about
So
Didn't you make a Jello pin for the Olympics?
that's another thing we could talk about. They
Yeah.
said your Olympic pins were hot, man. They were
They-
selling like hotcakes.
They were.
You did like 2 or 3 or more,
that. Oh, I probably did a dozen different pins.
and then they would stamp out hundreds of them, and they would sell, and they'd give them away, and some
Well, I
of them
didn't-
afterwards went on. They were getting auctioned off and sold for a lot more than they were worth.
Oh, yeah.
I got to
So-
look up some pins.
You know, you would get them made in China for 60, 70 cents a piece and then bring them back here. And it was like the tulip mania, you know, where people want to collect them and
Sure,
then start
yeah,
bidding
yeah.
the price
Well,
up.
pins were
and-
hot during the 2002 Olympics. I
And they were
remember that.
really hot.
couldn't
Yeah.
find
Hot
them.
commodity. Yeah.
I was a volunteer during
Were
those
you?
Olympics. I
Awesome.
couldn't find a pin anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
But they gave me a parka, I remember,
Yeah,
but I couldn't
those were
find
cool.
a pin to put on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I remember when there were these locations where people could trade pins and do the pins. And I remember the moment when the bottom fell out of it. And this guy sitting next to me, and he's got one of these pins that's very popular. And he's trying to exchange it or sell it, and the guy wasn't having it. And I go, oh. And the next day, the whole bottom fell out of it. So all those things that people are paying $10-$20 for, people were meeting me in parking garages to buy pins on the side.
Wow.
But all of a sudden, you couldn't give them away.
Interesting.
And it happened almost that fast.
Wow.
Do you have any left? I'd love one.
Yeah, I probably do.
All right. I've got to invite you back then. Next question then. Do you guys enjoy attending jam sessions, live music? Because we'd love to have you over for a jam some night. And you live so close by.
Do love live music.
Well, we have some very talented people that come over and play
great.
and sing. Yeah, it'd be great to have you there.
Yeah.
But that was an aside. I had another question for you, and I have forgotten it. And damn, it was a good question too.
Let me
really
let me expand upon
Please.
my Jello one. So you were influential in getting this Jello made the state snack. I think is what it was.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you felt like you were an influence on, change or getting something done? Because I mean, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and your pictures, in my opinion, are 2,000 words easy, just because they tell the truth. And
There was
you got to figure some of that would hit a nerve, and something would get done somewhere along the way. I mean,
the stuff I do nationally, it's hard to see that they have any effect, because my cartoon is like a minnow nibbling at
right?
Trump.
But you do a lot of state stuff too.
But I do a lot of state stuff, which does get noticed.
Yeah.
If I do a cartoon about the Salt Lake City mayor, they're going to hear about it all day long.
Or Herbert.
Or Herbert.
Herbert.
Yeah, they'll see that and notice it. Probably, I can point to, it was a couple years ago, the legislature, and they're so shifty. It was the last day of the legislature, the last hour, and they passed this bill that made it harder for news organizations to get government documents.
Wow.
And
Wow.
they thought they could just slide it by and we wouldn't
No,
notice.
Government documents is like approval forms or stuff you have to submit before. What do you mean?
Freedom of Information
Yeah.
Act.
Oh,
FOIA
gotcha. Okay,
They're going to make it
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
free. They don't want transparency or openness.
Gotcha.
That's
No.
the last thing they want.
And they were going to charge us, to get a piece
Oh,
of paper.
yeah.
Each page is going to be $10. If you
So
want to
again,
get
the
it.
little reporter, the little guy, the little newspaper can't afford that.
Or the
No,
university newspaper.
we can't afford that.
Wow,
Yeah,
they
because-
just jacked up the price big time.
I mean, they did all this stuff. And
Wow.
So we came out, the Tribune came out with an editorial, and I came out with a cartoon that I think, called them out on it because they thought they could do it without being noticed.
Right.
And, they're like, cockroaches being exposed and sort of scatter all over the place when people realized what they'd done.
Wow.
Yeah.
If only Herbert were more like Trump. He could have, said something racist, and then nobody would pay attention to what the legislature was actually doing, and you'd get away with it. But
it's just a little scary when the governor and both houses are all Republican led.
Creepy.
You know? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But in California, it's all Democrats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, recently too, another one sickened me, if I may use such a vulgar term. There were the bills to ban conversion therapy for all ages.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the Mormon Church came in and what had two main fights against that is first the parental control of their own family, their own kids, and number two, let's make sure we don't offend any religious sensitivities, you know. And so what Herbert, of course, he has to say, well, these are legitimate things we have to consider before we pass this. Whether he believes that or not, he's just being a slimy politician.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it's,
Bagley has one of my favorite cartoons is it's from the church office building, and there's a big window looking out on the temple, and there's I don't know really who it is. It's some church.
It's some random church.
Random church bureaucrat, and he's saying to somebody like, "Do you think other states have their own personal legislature?
Other churches, you mean?
Do you know that one?
No,
yes.
that
other churches
sounds
have
legit.
a state legislature like we do.
Well, you've done several, though, that show a big bay window from the church office building, and there's some people in there talking, and it looks down on the state capitol. Like they own it. Like that's, we are making the choices there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's some good artistry right there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if he's been up in that office.
Oh, yeah.
He's seen that view personally.
Well, that's a recurring tableau that I use to, and then there are some people who don't quite understand that, and they think he's being lazy. He's just not doing a new cartoon.
Yeah, or he's too close to a deadline. He's just pushing it out.
But it's kind of like the desert island, right? These keep singing cartoons, and it's a tableau. It's a meme, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry, my name's
Kate.
Kate showed me the cartoons drawn by that Korean girl, right?
Yeah.
They have a very Far Side-esque type of look to them, I think, in a way. Were you a fan of the Far Side at all?
Oh, yeah.
Love Gary Larson. My goodness. And can I scroll through these?
And that's a 12, 13-year-old Korean girl.
My
I drew those.
goodness.
13, 14 years old when I first met her.
That is pretty amazing
Dion
stuff.
Ma, is that her name? What was her name? Dion Ma?
Dion Ma.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, this explains something to me very well. I thought maybe she had some political edge to her artwork, but no, this is straight art.
Oh, it's
right
art,
here.
yeah.
Wow.
But the creativity and her
Detail
use of line and color and
She
gorgeous.
She reminds me of a Miyazaki with a creepy edge to it.
Like the Escher kind of almost. Escher, I don't know, I found
great.
Escher a little bit on the creepy side maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting stuff. That'd be interesting to see how her career takes off.
I will be, yeah. And thanks to Mr. Bagley. Possibly, anyway.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question I had for you, Pat, if you wouldn't mind, is, again, at the risk of bruising your modesty, did you have one favorite cartoon of your own or like a series that dealt with the same topic that you felt was your best work or might have had the best impact?
So every time I do a cartoon, I have no idea what the impact is going to be. I sometimes think I know how it's going to impact people. Like I think this is going to really outrage this community, and I don't hear anything, crickets. And then another cartoon, I'll do something about cats and dogs, and that's the one that gets all the...
Yeah.
But the cartoon that I've done that had the biggest response was I did a cartoon with Malala, and she was the young Pakistani girl.
You saw
Love her. Yeah, she's amazing.
And she won the Nobel Prize because she was promoting female education. And the Taliban targeted her and tried to assassinate her.
Again? I mean, after the shooting on the bus?
No, this is the shooting on the bus.
Okay, thank you.
And so later when she recovered, I did a cartoon of Malala, and she's holding a book called Knowledge. And it says...
I'm looking at it now.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe you can read it. What religious fundamentalists?
So I'll start behind the lines. The courage of Malala Yousafzai. What terrifies religious extremists like the Taliban are not American tanks or bombs or bullets. It's a girl with a book. And she has a little book.
I love it so much.
So
that's fantastic.
So that cartoon went out, and again, I did the cartoon. I had no idea what response I would get, and I started getting the cartoon sent back to me from all over the world, and it had been translated into Spanish and French and Arabic, and it probably went viral. Millions.
Essentially, when you got other countries responding, I'd say that's viral.
Yeah. So that went all over the place, and that was probably my most influential cartoon.
Very cool.
Nice. What about your favorite, though? Any personal favorite? I'm getting very personal here.
No, it's like asking to pick your favorite child. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some
unfair.
There's
it's
some
an unfair question.
There's some that hold up. Like The Big Lebowski is still a good movie because it still holds up.
Yeah.
And there are cartoons that I go back to and I think, that still works.
Yeah. Very cool.
There's I have a couple favorites, but one of my favorites is a Bagley cartoon, and he has Teddy Roosevelt, and somebody's asking him, what's America's best idea? Is that right?
No, it's kind of a mashup. It's a visual cartoon because it's the lands.
Aren't they all?
It's kind of, this is especially visual.
Okay.
But you've got Teddy Roosevelt talking to this female hiker, and it looks like they're in a place kind of like Arches. Mm-hmm. So the Red Rock is there. But in the background, you see it's becoming night, and you've got the stars, and then the clouds over here. And if you look at, that's the American flag.
Oh, right? Nice. Yeah.
And he is telling the woman, this is America's best idea if you can keep it.
Yeah.
Isn't that
that's
Ben
actually
Franklin?
based on a quote, isn't it? That sounds
that's
familiar.
a Ben Franklin quote.
Okay,
They come out after creating the nation, and she says, what have we got?
The
He
Republic
says,
is...
a republic if we can keep it.
If you can keep it. Yeah. Well, we must hang
We're on the
together,
verge,
or
man.
assuredly we shall hang separately.
Yeah, he was a cartoonist, Ben Franklin.
Oh, well, he's a printer. On his tombstone,
Publisher.
He wanted nothing else. He didn't want politicians, scientists, anything. He said, here lies Ben Franklin, printer.
Yeah.
That was it. That was what he was most proud of.
Well, he did the cartoon with the snake that's cut up into pieces.
Don't tread on me? That was his?
No, not tread on me. He says, unite or die.
Wow.
Was his cartoon.
Wow, no kidding.
And each section of the snake is a different state.
Different colony at the time, but
different
soon
colony.
to become state.
Yeah.
Wow, I did
I
not know.
want that framed and on my wall.
Isn't
That is
it with
awesome. I love it.
The grand
Love it. I'm
arch
gonna look that
is
one up.
part of the
Right-click, save.
This is one of yours? That's
That's
obviously
amazing,
yours.
isn't it?
That
That's
is
one of
your
my
hands.
favorites. Good call.
It's so
That's
beautiful.
awesome.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
Right there.
All right.
Simple, truthful.
Fantastic.
It hits you.
And then there's one of my son's favorites of Pat Bagley. It has a bunch of elephants, and they're saying it's right after Obama had won the presidency, and a bunch of elephants are together, and they're like, how are we ever going to win? Everybody's growing old. We're becoming obsolete. And somebody says, well, we got to change our message. We've got to change how we're talking to people. And the other guy says, or we could cheat. and then the next panel has all of the elephants like thinking like, and then the next panel has them all voting for cheat. I cheat. I vote for cheat. Let's cheat.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, "Oh, the Republican Party's dead. Oh, they're when Obama got elected, they're done. They're done. They
After
crashed the
Watergate,
economy.
they're done, yeah.
Obama's president. The Republican Party's gone. But there they are.
I know.
That's just nuts.
I mean, how they survived the Iraq War
Yeah.
and the financial collapse is beyond me.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when Bush got elected the second time. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. Oh, don't change horses midstream was the big slogan I heard.
What?
No, we need a new horse for sure.
Cheney.
Yeah.
And I don't want to pin this on anybody, but I know I knew the moment I knew Trump had won was when it was, they were showing pictures that they were taking interviews at the polling places and all this, and this polling place, we're doing these exit interviews, blah 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 blah. There wasn't one story that I recall of lines going around the block. Both times when Obama ran, lines going around the block.
And,
People did not come out to vote.
Yeah.
Is what I saw. When I saw there were no lines, I thought, oh, we're in trouble.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, neither candidate was very inspiring.
Yeah.
People stayed home.
Yeah. Well, and people, Trump's so transparent. You either love him or hate him. He's just out there on the stage. But I don't think people realize Hillary and Bill had some serious skeletons that, I still voted for her.
I did too, but and then again, a lot of that's promoted by Fox. I don't know how much of it's true. Like the whole Uranium One thing. I don't know, maybe you can educate me on that a little bit because it was. I thought it was debunked. It was essentially, she was
for 40 years. The Republicans were working on vilifying Hillary, not just Bill, but for 40 years they hated her.
The whole Benghazi thing was just ugly,
and then the
gross.
email. Really, we're worried about email, but we're not worried about Ukraine. Come on.
Yeah. Well, Uranium One too. Shep Smith from Fox educated me on that one. Is the big takeaway there is any uranium mined in America, it's federally illegal for it to be shipped out. It has to stay here.
Well, and there are different grades of it. I mean, what's one of the things Obama did right? He was going around to these other countries and getting their high-grade plutonium and giving them the low-grade plutonium that you can't build weapons out of, and he really reduced the possibility of other countries developing nuclear-grade weapons. But he never gets credit for that. They never talk about it.
No.
And this was Rachel Maddow who taught me about that, and that was before they went off the deep end. Or I couldn't trust what she was saying anymore when she was more of a champion for progressives.
I watched Chris Cuomo about 2 weeks ago, and it felt like a Joe Biden campaign ad. It really did. I understand, Pat, why you don't go to those sources. You don't get the full story, I believe is the way you described it.
Just get spin.
But that's how Americans get their news, is they get it visually through their eyes.
I do. I have to admit, I got to read more.
Well, cartoons are visual for their eyes.
That's true. We need to spread them more.
Yeah, but they're short. They're short enough and they're simple enough, and they have impact.
How can we get his cartoons on YouTube? Because that's where a lot of people are.
Oh, good question. Yeah, has there been some collages put together to?
There's a subreddit for Pat Bagley. He's kind of a big deal.
Reddit? Some people I know use Reddit, but I don't use Reddit much. I'm not sure how popular that site is. Really, do you use Reddit much?
I've never have.
Kids under 30. Yeah. Reddit is where they spend a lot of their time. And depends on what they subscribe to, but
I'm thinking about doing another section of this podcast, because now that Mojo's got this other job and we won't be doing these as often, I've got to keep publishing, keep rolling. I'm wondering if maybe what I can do is sign up for Kaggle, right? Get the publishing rights. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if this is even kosher or not, and then. Because I don't want to show my face on my podcast, but maybe I could show one of your cartoons as my backdrop rather than. And then talk about the topic that you're addressing in that cartoon. That could be a kind of a neat way.
20-minute discussion on the cartoon.
In the meantime, he's got his cartoon up there that people can, like you say, because there's so much detail in those cartoons. Sometimes you need to look at them more than a minute.
I love this idea. I do.
Oh, there are lots of cartoonists on the site, and you could pick a cartoonist.
Ooh, true, to match my topic of the day for that cast.
Yeah. And if we chose one of yours and then we did our 20-minute spiel, we would pass it through you first to make sure it's cool that we go ahead with it.
Well, I mean, if you go to Kaggle.com, you buy licensing rights and handle all that. So
is it a monthly payment type of thing, or
it depends. Annual? You could do it individually by the show. You could subscribe, and it's a graduating scale. On if you're MSNBC, he's going to charge you a lot. But if you're a small podcast out of Salt Lake City, it might be very inexpensive. I don't know.
Oh, we'll see. I'll check into it.
That sounds wonderful.
Just telling me no Pat.
Well, you remind me, it's just Pat from SNL. Do you remember that one? It's just Pat.
Now, that's one good thing about Trump is that he's really breathed new life into SNL, man.
Oh, yeah. I like that. I like that.
These new ones they just had out. I just watched a couple the other night, Baldwin doing Trump. It's been hilarious.
That's great.
Oh, yeah, the recent one with Baldwin doing a Trump rally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't that good? And those people coming up and they're just so pro-Trump. It's off the hook. And it was like, yes, but it's so true.
One of them came up and
why
said,
it's so funny.
Mr. President, I know you could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it, and I'd be honored if you'd use my gun, sir. It was so funny.
Oh, it's like a Bagley cartoon.
It is.
Yeah. Like a come to life kind of. Yeah. Totally.
Well, Pat, before we wrap up, have you come up with any ideas tonight for this week's output?
And
you can say no.
Well, I mean, there was the al-Baghdadi thing where he was, the special forces killed him, and Trump goes out there and takes all the credit. And
Yeah.
I'll be thinking about that tomorrow.
That's the ISIS leader. I saw something on that. I haven't looked into that.
Well, do you remember the tweet that Trump sent out after, excuse me, after Bin Laden was killed, and he said, "Don't thank Obama for that. The SEALs killed him." It's so.
There's a tweet for everything.
Yes, that was it. That's the one I saw.
Or
the same
the
post.
tweet the other day was
that was George Takei, by the way.
He tweeted 4 dots.
Oh yeah, he did.
I think I got that off of SNL. He tweeted and it had 41,000 likes.
I know.
That was on like the Daily Show or something. SNL. No, it was on SNL.
It was on their news
Yeah.
show.
Just amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
And he also told Putin about the plans to kill the leader of ISIS before he told anybody in our
Pelosi
government.
or the Congress or anybody.
Anybody.
Yeah.
No, the whole thing is
Just letting Putin in on
No,
what's going
I
on.
didn't read that headline, but wow.
I mean, the photo of him in the Situation Room, and apparently the timestamp doesn't quite fit. So he was golfing when they were doing the mission.
Wow.
So I don't know. I mean, there's so much there that who knows.
It's
A
fertile.
little more research before you draw that cartoon.
And here's the thing: something else could happen between now and tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, between the time that I leave the house and I get to work, something has happened. Right?
Yeah.
Something new.
Usually, it seems to be kind of a little bit slower these days, but I don't know.
Sharpen your
because,
pencil. my
The
yeah.
friend.
impeachment, it's slowing things down.
Yeah, what the whole storming of the room when it's a bipartisan inquiry, secure room, and half the people that are going storming the room are allowed to be in the room.
Yeah.
It's just off the hook.
Well,
It's just-
Kate, what you just said, it has extra poignance now. Is the headline I read today about that was, Trump didn't want to alert any members of Congress for fear that word would get out and endanger U.S. personnel, but he
Right.
let Putin know.
But he's not
about
worried
it.
about Putin letting anything out that would
Yeah.
endanger, because he trusts Putin.
more than our Congress.
Now, Pat, is
more
that an
than our
example
media.
where you've got to research it more deeply because you don't want to get it wrong? Did he actually let Putin know before members of Congress did?
He said he did. The Russians said, no, we have no idea what you're talking about.
And that happens sometimes too.
So again, you have to kind of, I'll figure out what actually happened. before I say
Or
anything.
perhaps you could even make a cartoon on that, like the whole. Mitch McConnell said it was a perfect call, and you ask Mitch McConnell, and he's like,
I never
don't
talked to him
require
about that.
I never talked to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be the cartoon. I can almost see it now. Pat Bagley's caricature of Mitch McConnell. I want to see how you draw Mitch McConnell. Actually, I haven't
brilliant.
seen
I've
it.
seen it.
I've got to
seen
see
it.
that.
Yeah,
I'm going to go look that up.
It's nice.
Oh my goodness! Are we ready?
The one last
Okay,
question before we do the outro. The Malala cartoon that Kate just showed. So that one right there, artistic and very nice, but that one would not take as long to draw as others I've seen where you've got like 12 panels telling a story and all that. So when your inspiration hits you, you must feel a little sigh of relief to realize, okay, this one won't take quite as long to draw as the next one,
Yeah, but sometimes I'm pushing the deadline and I get the idea and it's complicated and it's involved and I go, I got to do it.
Yeah.
I just have to do it anyway.
And get it done.
Yeah.
And your hand cramps up, I'm sure, and you got to take a break and you get a cup of coffee or something. And
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know. Well, Mr. Bagley, forgive me. We love your work. We hope to see many more years of it. And thank you again for
It's been a
appearing on the
pleasure.
Two Joes podcast. It's been a great evening. May and Jill, thank you again.
Mojo, another
Studio.
great guest. Thank you for lining them up. It's been so awesome meeting you, Pat, and thanks for coming, Kate. I loved your input tonight.
And Kate's our next guest.
I hope so, and I hope
Has she agreed to appear yet? I'm not sure. Kate, will you give us a visual affirmative? You'll be our
If
next
you want
guest.
to talk about childhood apraxia, speech,
Absolutely.
and autism, I am there.
I would
I'm
love to
down
hear
with
how
that.
you help children. I would love to.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Thanks again, everybody, to the Two Joes.
thanks.
See you next time.